of all of our participants today and the Educare Learning Network, I want to thank the Educare speakers. Thank you for sharing your stories and your insights, and thank you for your efforts. Our collective power exists because of you. Now, I would like to introduce a guest speaker who will share her experiences as an advocate and insights on how we might ensure our own resilience and stamina needed to move the Educare Five to reality. Ericka Huggins is a human rights activist, a poet, an educator, a former Black Panther leader, and political prisoner who has devoted her life to the equitable treatment of all human beings. She has lectured across the country and internationally on issues relating to the well-being of women, children and youth, restorative justice as the antidote to punitive justice, whole being education, and the role of spiritual practice in sustaining activism and promoting social change. You might be interested to know that from 1973 to 1981, Ericka was the director of the Oakland Community School, the groundbreaking community-run child development center and elementary school founded by the Black Panther Party. The school's curriculum and the principles that inspired it became a model for the predecessor to the charter school movement. During this time, she was also the first woman and the first Black person to be appointed to the Alameda County Board of Education, which serves children with cognitive, emotional, and physical disabilities, as well as incarcerated youth. Today, Ericka will share her personal experiences of finding life-affirming balance as an activist and a mother while on trial for her life. It is this balance that has continued to sustain her every day since. Her remarks will focus on everyone's capacity to find inner stability in the face of continual daily challenges so that we can create healthy ways to sustain ourselves. It is my honor to welcome Ericka Huggins.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Saritha. Thank you, Nikki. Thank you, Jesse. Thank you to all of the technical people who helped to make this event as stellar as it is. I want to say a personal thank you to parents. The voices I just heard were so true and touching and revealing of the work we all need to do together. Thank you also to school leaders, funders, networkers. Thank you to everyone. And though there may be no children sitting with us here, or not very many of them, they're in our hearts. So thank you to all the babies and all the children and all the teens and all the young adults. This is their world. We've been listening a lot so far. So now I just want you to sit and breathe. Nothing fancy. You're already breathing. You're alive. So just relax your shoulders down away from your ears and focus on your breath. No hard work here. Nothing to think about. Except that there is goodness within each of you. Every human being is born with this goodness. So consider your own goodness. And as you breathe in, breathe it out to any place in the world that may need it. You don't have to know the people there or speak their language. Just send your goodness. Breathe in and breathe out. And now bring it closer into the United States, where most of us are living. And breathe out your goodness to those babies and children who are still at the borders of our United States. Breathe out your goodness to their parents, their grandparents, and their families. You don't have to know their names or anything about them. Just send your goodness. Now, if you will, breathe that in and out at your own pace. And send your goodness to the city that you are in, the city where you work, or the city where you live. Could be two different cities. You don't have to know all of the people and all of their circumstances, speak all of their languages. You just can send your goodness. It is infinite. It's never depleted. Now, if you will, send your goodness to the neighborhood that you live in. You don't even have to know the people in your neighborhood or like them, actually. Just send your goodness that they are thriving, that they find joy in the moments of their days. Whatever I'm asking you to do, I'm doing as well. I live in Oakland, California, and I am sending my goodness throughout the city to all of the houseless villages, to the incarcerated youth nearby. Do it as you'd like in your city. And now, as you breathe in and breathe out, breathe in some of that goodness and keep it for yourself. Your beautiful body as it is, your brilliant mind, your generous heart. Breathe in and breathe out, and breathe in that goodness for you. Take a few deep breaths, and then we'll return to our, let's call it a walk and talk. I know that you can't engage with me. However, I feel as if I am engaging with you. So we're pretending, okay, that we're having a real conversation about real things in real time. So I want to tell you a little bit about me. And Sarita, thank you very much for your introduction. And by the way, Sarita, I grew up in Washington, D.C., in Southeast. And as a little girl, I was very stunned by the way in which the wealthier people who lived in Northwest lived, and the schools their children went to, and the schools available to me and my sister and my brother. And I wanted to do something about it, even as a little girl. And then as a teenager, I would go and help people learn to read at the recreation center a few blocks away from my house. Later, as Sarita mentioned, I joined the Black Panther Party, but what sparked my interest in systemic change is looking at it every day. looking at the inequities and not just feeling or complaining about them, but wanting to do something to serve the world. And so at age 15, I went to the March on Washington, the March on Washington in 1963. And I was so struck by what I saw and touched. So many people, so quiet and listening so intently to the speakers. And I noticed that the speakers were all men, by the way. I didn't know what to make of it. There were women there who I thought would speak, like Rosa Parks and others. And I was just making note. Isn't it good to be aware of the world you live in? You don't want to wallow in what is not quite right, but just to know it, be aware of it. And so while I was there, I noted that at one point, Lena Horne, song person, activist, actress, moved quickly to the microphone and sung 2 syllables, freedom. And when she sung those syllables, silence fell like a blanket over everyone. And in that moment, my desire to make change in the world gelled. And it wasn't my mind or even a feeling. This vow arose that I will serve people for the rest of my life. And so I began looking for ways that I could serve. And I knew for sure that it had something to do with families, with children, with young people. And so when I was a college student at a historical Black university called Lincoln University outside of Philly, I heard about the Black Panther Party. You see, being aware of our world and how it works means that we ask questions, not to belittle or dismiss, but to gain knowledge of the truth of a circumstance. And what touched me about the Black Panther Party is that what I was reading in a magazine article said that it was for all poor and all oppressed people. Oppressed meaning that the systemic inequities were ones that they live in every day, every moment of the day. And also they provided programs in community, educational programs, health programs, mental health programs, plumbing programs, senior programs, teen programs. There were 60 community survival programs of the Black Panther Party, and I wanted to be a part of it. And so my boyfriend at the time, John Huggins, who later became my husband and the father of our firstborn child, he and I drove together across the country. I was 19. He was in his early 20s. And we looked to join the Black Panther Party, and we did in Los Angeles. And to make a very long story short, we joined the Black Panther Party and became everyday workers in community. Whatever people needed, because we didn't know without asking them. Let me make a point here. We can't tell people what they need. They know what they need. People are the experts of their own lives. So the way that we worked in community was to ask people, well, if you are wanting to get access to your incarcerated brother, we have a busing to prison program. Would you like to be on the list to go to the local prison? We didn't tell the person to do this. We asked, and we gave access and opportunity, as one of the parents said. At one point, John Huggins became a student at UCLA because there was a specific program called the High Potential Program for Black and Brown students. And he was a member of the Black Panther Party and a student with my friend Alprentice Bunchy Carter. Another long story short, because of his advocacy on the campus and because the federal government did not like us, they didn't want us to feed children. As a matter of fact, that was said in an FBI memo. I'm not concerned, J. Edgar Hoover said, about the Black Panther Party members asking to defend their communities. It's that breakfast program that is dangerous. How's that so? There are people who don't want change. As a matter of fact, would prefer to go back in history. And there are people who want change and want to move forward, want to bounce, spring, imagine themselves in a bright and caring future. We know this now because we've been experiencing a parallel pandemic, haven't we? The COVID pandemic, and that which has opened us to the existing inequities that have been around for hundreds of years. Not just for African American people, not just for Asian American people or Indigenous people or Latinx people, but for poor and white people as well. Parallel pandemic. Are you feeling me? So, the FBI was really interested in, as they said, destroying us, neutralizing us, which was the purpose of their internal program in the FBI called Counterintelligence Program. And as the result, they orchestrated the murders of John Huggins and Alprentice Bunchy Carter. I was pregnant in the year before John was murdered. I mentioned our firstborn child, a baby girl. And she was born in December of '68, and John was killed in early January of 1969. Hearing my story, are you thinking perhaps that there are stories about the people that you serve that you don't know? Of course, you can't just walk up and ask a person, what's your story? I'm intentionally telling you mine. Because in that moment on January 17th, when John and my friend Alprentice were killed, I became, without two of my best friends, a widow and a single mother. And some of us still have ideas about why people are single mothers without knowing, because we have these ideas, these assumptions, these biases that we can uncover in our own hearts. I have to do that every day. Arrowing forward in history and a number of long stories, I figured out how to survive and heal my heart. Where did I do that? I was incarcerated because the FBI orchestrated an event where a man was killed. I did not kill him or have anything to do with his death, but I was arrested and held without bail for 2 years, unable to see my baby daughter at all. And because I could not see her at first, I thought, I can't do this. And then I found out I could see her for 1 hour each Saturday. And I thought, how will I go and be with her without crying the whole way through? You know, when we face challenges in our lives, our education doesn't matter. Our academic education doesn't matter. Our hearts are broken, and the suffering takes the uppermost place in our minds. And I decided that I would sit still and breathe. I was 21. I said to you, I was a grieving widow and the mother of a very small child. And so as I practiced sitting and breathing every day, I became able to be with my daughter. That was the first priority, and not cry. I was able to be present in the moments with her. You following me? Absolutely present. Of course, when that hour was over and my mother-in-law, Elizabeth Huggins, who I just still love, although she's passed on, for driving from New Haven, Connecticut to the women's prison in Connecticut, where John was raised. New Haven is where he was raised. I thought, I'll keep doing this. Even if I cry all the way back to my solitary cell, I'll keep doing this. And it will have benefit beyond me. And it has. I understand the nature of suffering, the nature of loss. And I know there is access to joy. There is joy in the children that we birth. There is joy in the children that we adopt. There is joy in the children that we learn from as we call ourselves teachers. We're really learning from children and their families. So I tell you this story because I want you to know I don't come proposing to be the expert and professional on early childhood education, though I did learn some things at Oakland Community School for those 9 years that I served as director. I am the expert of my own life as a woman of color, as a mother, and now as a grandmother. Yes, my daughter is fine, and she has 2 sons. And we talk often about the future we want to see for her young Black sons, a future that does not include any level of harm. We all want that for our children, don't we? We don't want harm to come to them. But we live in a very violent world. So it's best that we dispense with the harm in our hearts. It's best we do as much as we can while working to promote systemic change. I feel like I spent a long time telling you my story, but I think sometimes it's important because then we are connected. We all have stories, and we don't want to hold on to the old ones forever, especially if they constrict our hearts. But it helps us to serve, doesn't it? Thinking that if I have a story, someone else does as well. So what can we do in this time of parallel pandemic? Because in parts of the world, the pandemic is still surging. And of course, the parallel pandemic means that we are still suffering from the impact of history on our present moment, where systemic racism and other inequities of all kinds have just shown their faces everywhere. So what can we do? It's not hopeless. We are powerful people, all of us, especially educators. We can think about how we can take care of ourselves by cultivating our own sense of self-worth. We are valuable on the planet, every single one of us. And if we have the great good fortune of having children and grandchildren, we're even more valuable because we are naturally mentors and guides. If we are educators and we don't have biological children, we have all the babies we've served over time. And if we're leaders in the field of serving those who serve the children, we can act as if all these children are our very own. So what about the children? It's about them. And teachers know this and come out of pocket often to express how much they value children. How can we take care of our minds? We can sit still during the day. You got 2 minutes. Even if you're in a meeting, you can notice your breathing. So you bring yourself back to the anchor of power within you. You can speak up when the time is right, rather than waiting for somebody else to do it. You can do it compassionately and with empathy. A 5-year-old girl told me that empathy isn't pity. And when I asked her what she meant, she said, "You're not feeling sorry for a person. You just stepping into somebody's shoes, their big old shoes, and walking around in them for a while." I love that. I can still see that little girl. What a teacher. And the parents I talk to, some of them right now are frightened for their boys and their girls in the classroom, in the streets, on public transportation, going into a grocery store, walking down the street, because we need to face where we are in history and do a little inner survey about how we can be helpful in the place that we're in, the work that we're doing, in the skin that we're in, with the people that we're with, and the skills and experiences that we have. We can also notice the quality of our self-talk. I'm talking with you today. And what are you talking about as you are listening and talking with me? We're always having multiple conversations going on. It's called the mind-body conversation. It's happening all the time. We can heal our hearts, or at least begin it, so that when we're in the company of children and families, we're not bringing the unprocessed stuff of our lives to them. It's hard work, I assure you, but we can do it. We're powerful people. What am I talking about? I'm talking about resiliency, the ability to bounce back. For centuries, some of our people have done that. And when I say our people, I'm looking back at around the globe and all of our, as we say, ancestors. We are indebted to them and connected with them. And sometimes we're inspired by them. And here we are. We can spring forward. We can discover a new way, even though the systems are still in place, and we all hope that they will change, the systems that created the inequities that we face. We can do our part while we're here on planet Earth. We have the capacity to go to the heart of a thing, to the heart of the community, and strive to learn from the challenges, not to dismiss them, not to act like they're not there, to learn from the challenge. What is it teaching us? What do we know about it? We can question, unpack it, as a friend of mine loves to say. We can be spirited, which is connected to being joyful, but we can't always be joyful. But we can have enthusiasm about what we're doing. We can use our fierce imagination. And I put fierce before imagination because sometimes our ideas are the ones we are waiting for, and we need to share them. And leaders need to listen. Listening is such a great human communication. Just listening. We can recognize the root of a problem and do the right thing at the right time with the right people. I said that before, but I couldn't say it enough. So we go to people and ask them what they need. And when they tell us, we go, well, maybe not. Well, at least we try not to say that, but then we take into account what people are telling us. And I know that this network and the services you provide, you do that as best you can. But there are people who are policymakers who need to be convinced. You can convince them. I've had to do it. That's another long story. You can convince them. You can speak from your heart and believe in the power of your own mind. One of the other things that we can do is develop elasticity, like a rubber band, elasticity in decision making. That, sometimes the rules are a little confining, and we can look at new ways of protecting our rules, our guidelines, our policies, our procedures, without being punitive or judgmental or keeping progress from happening. We can listen. I said that. We can talk to one another. We can have real conversation with one another, like we're having today. We can help make the invisible visible. And if everybody can't hear it when you speak about it, that's all right. Somebody will. Yes, we can say yes. We know that the word no is in every language, but we can say yes more and more. And if we are in leadership, we can do what a young woman told me recently. We can cede power. That doesn't mean submit and let someone take over your role. It's just you step back a little bit and get out of the way so that goodness can reign. I want to end by telling you a few things. I'm not ending right away, but I'm warning you that I'm not going to be able to talk for much longer. How are you doing? Are you breathing? Are you taking care of yourselves? You can stand and stretch and sit back down. Nobody can see you. What tools do you need at home and at work to take care of yourselves? Make a little note for yourself. Just make a little note. What do you need to take care of yourself? At home and at work. And how will you go about making that happen without waiting on someone to do it for you? What support do you need at work to care for the people who you are serving? Do you need greater supports? Can you let someone know? Compassionately? We're at a time when services have been depleted for at least a year or more in various ways. And sometimes it's not the simplest thing to get the support that we need, but I'm talking about basic things, very basic, that may or may not cost money. So make a note for yourself. If you can think of something that you can talk to leaders in your field about, or to your supervisors, or to the boards of the organizations you work with, or to the network. Maybe you have a great idea whose time has come about communicating more fluidly among the service providers and the networking organizations. I really like the Early Learning Network policy framework. And what stood out to me about it is its familiarity. We've been asking for these things forever. And now you will make sure that they happen. You, the leadership, the funders, of course, the policymakers themselves, and most especially the educators, the teachers, the teacher aides, and the parents. I was thinking as I was listening to the parents, wouldn't it be a great thing to have a town hall of children in your area, in your state, those 15 states plus DC, and let children tell you what they want? It would be lovely. And it would be really empowering for them. Yes, we have been asking forever. I was at Oakland Community School from 1973 to 1981, and we were talking to the California State Department of Education about what we were doing and how to make this kind of whole being education and the one-stop shop for services available to all Californians in the hope that this model could spread around the country. And the assistant superintendent of public schools at the time thought it was the best idea. And he proposed it. And It came back no. But let's hope that in 2021 it's going to happen. It can with all of us working in concert. And I wish you all goodness with that. I'm going to tell you a story, and I'll end with the story. My favorite thing to do is to work with elementary school teachers. This uplifts me, inspires me. And when I'm sad about events in the world or don't know quite what the next thing is for me to do, when I work with fourth and fifth graders, which I've had the absolute honor to do in the last 3 years, because they want to know, what does it mean to want to be someone who makes change in our world? And there's a rainbow of children. This isn't just Black and brown children. It's all the children, because they're public school classrooms and some private schools as well, or charter schools. But I was talking to a teacher one day, and she said she'd had a conversation with her fourth graders about superpowers. You know, we all love the idea of superpowers. We adults, we love it too. We just don't often talk about it. But the children always do. So she asked her class, what superpower do you want to have? If you could have any superpower, what would it be? And one little girl said, I'd love to be invisible so that I could go anywhere and just help people. And they wouldn't have to know that it was my idea to help them because they couldn't see me. But they would know that I am there, that something is there supporting them and getting the help they need. One little boy said, I'd like to be able to fly because I could go to places that need me and I could get there in a second or in a minute if it's far away, and I could be of help. And then another little girl, and these were Black and brown children, by the way. By that I mean they were African American. Some of them are from Africa. They were Latinx, so they were all over the Latin American, Central American, South American diaspora. They were indigenous to the United States. And by the way, indigenous people are the only non-immigrants on this land. Thank you so much for holding the land. So these children were so excited about this idea of superpowers. And then this one little boy, and my teacher friend got choked up as she began to tell me about this little boy. She said he never talked. He could talk, but he never spoke up in class. He was a little brown boy. And he spoke up and he said, I already have a superpower. And the teacher said, well, what is it? And he said, it's love. My superpower is love. And if I could express it in the way that I want, the whole world would change. Isn't that beautiful? He didn't have any degrees. He wasn't leading anything. He wasn't making policy yet. I want to leave you with this thought inspired by those children and by incarcerated youth. It's something that some teenagers asked me one day, well, Ericka, What can we do? We're young, we're teenagers. What can we do to make change in the world? And inspired by the superpower of love, this is what I said. And it's what I'll end with. Love is a great expression of power. Use it to transform your world. Thank you so much for talking with me and walking with me. And I wish you all good things in the work that you do, and that the policy framework actually becomes reality across the land. It's hard work. Yes, it's hard work. But there are friends that you don't know yet who will be there to support you. Again, thank you. It was an honor to be with you. And I will turn everything back to Saritha or Nikki or whoever is meant to take the mic from me.